Diolch to Beth Lewis, and thanks to the Minister for today's statement. We've been having an inquiry into homelessness on the Equalities and Local Government Committee. As Beth and Jenkins mentioned earlier, we did have a site visit to the Salvation Army hostel just down the road from here in Bute Street, which was a very instructive visit, as we did get to speak not only to the staff but also to several of the residents, many of whom are former rough sleepers. Of course, it was only a small group, but I think common themes emerged fairly strongly. These seem to tell a tale of early family problems, in many cases, which leads to early abuse of alcohol and drugs. When the residents begin to go on programmes where they are able to detox, several of them began to realise that the substance abuse was actually masking mental health issues. Now, I know this has been mentioned several times today, the mental health issue. Mike Hedges mentioned the possibility that some people start to abuse drugs and alcohol once they become homeless, and indeed this may be the case in some instances, but certainly I think the experience that I took on board from the site visit was that it's probably more likely that the substance abuse and alcohol abuse probably led to the homelessness. That probably comes first. I think the crucial thing which you have tackled in your statement today is that there are these intimate links between mental health, substance abuse and homelessness. So a persistent problem that you are going to have in dealing with the homeless issue is that you will have to work alongside the Health Ministry in getting resources directed towards mental health provision so that the homeless can access them. I know you've acknowledged that. So to move to questions, how closely are you working with the Health Minister in this regard? And in terms of funding, of the new funding that you're announcing, can you be more precise on how much is actually going towards mental health provision? I think that in many respects, tackling the homelessness problem means crossing portfolios for you, Minister, in some important respects, not only with the Health Minister. There's also possibly the training aspect, which you've touched on a few times today, because when we went to the hostel, other issues that were raised by the staff at the hostel included the need for continued resources so that more staff could be trained to deal with the complex needs of homeless people, as well as the detox programmes. There are also programmes being run dealing with teaching the residents basic skills, which could eventually lead them into employment. I think it was good that you have mentioned several times in your statement the training aspect. Do you see any benefit in interacting more closely with the Skills Minister over issues like this, in terms, for instance, of accessing resources? Finally, there have been comments, not today, but comments in general, that the homeless issue is really only discussed in politics once a year, and that is in the run-up to Christmas. And there is some extra funding provision at that time of year, and we do have, it becomes a media issue, and of course we do have a lot of volunteers active at that time of year. But now we are in February, and we're in the midst of another cold snap. I note that you mentioned cold weather plans in your statement, so could you expand a little on how these cold weather plans will work? Diolch yn fawr.
Minister.
I thank you for those questions, and I'm really encouraged that the committee is undertaking a piece of work into rough sleeping in particular, and looking at homelessness more widely. And that's really important because I hope I've been clear that both of the documents which have been published today are live documents, so I'll be keen to be looking at the recommendations that the committee might be coming forward with in terms of reviewing and adapting those documents to the best evidence and the best ideas that are coming forward throughout. It is a complex picture in terms of which comes first, in terms of substance misuse and mental ill health, but I think that what's important is that we do ensure that all of our services, which are there for people who are rough sleepers, do come from a trauma-informed approach, and that's why the PATH project, which Public Health Wales has been leading on, is so important, because that's been offering training to frontline professionals, over 1,000 of them now, in terms of how to take that trauma-informed approach and to consider the story of the individual and what got them to that place and what can be done to assist them. Some of the projects that have been funded by the additional £2.6 million of funding that was announced this financial year are specifically to support people with mental health needs who are experiencing homelessness. So that includes training for outreach workers in Wrexham, for example, so that they're able to support and assist people with a mental health support need, and funding for a link worker between health and homelessness services in the Vale of Glamorgan as well. So there are some specific posts which are being funded as a result of that. More generally, in Welsh Government, I've been keen to make that link, coming as I have done from the social services portfolio into the housing one, being really keen to make that link between my former responsibilities and my current ones. So we now have a member of staff within Welsh Government who is specifically looking at housing and health. So looking across the piece, really, in terms of what we can be doing with our capital funding through the Intermediate Care Fund, for example, and in terms of policy as well, to ensure that we are fully linked up and using all of the potential, really, that good housing has for the promotion of good health as well. My former responsibilities also included substance misuse. So I'm keen to highlight the fact that within our substance misuse delivery plan, we do have specific actions there in order to develop support for people who are rough sleeping and people who are homeless. Welsh Government invests almost £50 million a year into this agenda, and our area planning boards will have a specifically important role in terms of tackling substance misuse locally, and that will extend to people who are homeless and rough sleeping as well. And many of the projects, such as the Huggard Centre, which the committee visited, are very much fully linked in with substance misuse services. And I'd also point out that we've commissioned a review of the substance misuse treatment framework, good practice framework for the provision of substance misuse services to homeless people and those with accommodation problems, and that will be completed in the spring in order to again make sure that we are linking up with all the best and latest evidence in terms of substance misuse and homelessness.
Thank you. I have 3 more